Welcome to another episode of 50 Shades of Shilamida with your hostess, Shilamida. Today, I'm super excited to bring to you an amazing human that I actually got to spend some time with in person. We're going to dive deep into all the things about her today. Juliette is a certified mind and body coach, a hypnotherapist, and an expert on relationships, sensuality, healing, trauma, and body shame. She specializes in the reinvention of the most intimate relationship in life, the one that you have with yourself. With courses, coaching, VIP experience, and retreats, Juliette has guided and mentored thousands of women over the past decade and a half, rewrite their relationship with self-confidence, their bodies, mind, and spirit using her unique rapid release, rewire, and restore method, which I got to witness in person. Her mission is to create a world where every woman remembers the truth of who they are and where scrumptiousness, pleasure, ease, spirituality, and sensuality are prioritized. She is a mother of 4, and they are all in their early 20s, and she loves them fiercely. Please welcome to the show, Juliette von Schardenberg.
Thank you so much for having me. Oh my God, that's such a mouthful, isn't it?
I love it. I love it. It reminds me of like The Sound of Music, right? With the Von Trapp family.
Kind of, yes.
Far from it, but that's like where my mind went at first.
Well, I was that family, that blended family of 7 children at one point.
Oh yeah? Okay, there we go. Did you guys sing is the question.
Yeah, some of them did. I didn't so much, but they did.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Coming from a big family is just, it's on another level, right? I mean, you have 4 children, so you have created a large family, and I love it. I love being a mom now to all the and I didn't like it at first. At first, it was like too much for me. I was like, what did I do? Where is my freedom? Why did I do this? But now that they're coming into themselves and becoming more human, I guess, it's really a fun thing. And with 4 older children, I'm sure that you're living through the same.
It's beautiful, I mean, I had 4 kids in under 3 years time, right? So everyone's like, yo, crazy. I'm like, yeah, crazy, definitely. But at the same time, they didn't really need a lot of outside friends. When they brought one friend along, they're like, whoa, we got all these people to play with. So they've really grown up as their own little community, and they're just, if I look at them now, they're super close together. They share everything. Yeah, it's been really beautiful.
That's wonderful. I want to dive deep into how you got into sensuality, and I love when you say the word scrumptious. It just does something to it. Say it to me, Juliette.
Scrumptiousness, darling. And it's funny, right? Someone was asking me on a podcast the other day, it's like, what's that word scrumptious? I just said scrumptious to me feels like it's the life force, it's our energy, it's our chi, it's everything that's moving through us, and it's just what pleasure and what life is about, right? It's that beauty, and pleasure doesn't have to be deeply sexual or anything, but it can just be, where do you have your little bundles of joy? Where do you find the scrumptiousness of life? How can you just have a bit of, say, a sun ray on your shoulders and then just go, it's you talk about it in gratitude, I talk about it in scrumptiousness.
No, I love it. I love that word. And I love what you said, that pleasure doesn't have to come from sexuality. Because I think that when you say the word pleasure, that's automatically what people think, right? And there's this whole life of pleasure and scrumptiousness and sensuality that doesn't have to be sexual.
Completely.
And a lot of people have a hard time with that, because I feel like more people are traumatized sexually than we really realize.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people have dealt with things throughout their childhood and their lives and stuff. And so when we become adults, we almost feel like we can't have this pleasure circle or, be sensual or sexual without an attachment to it.
And also, just to how I define trauma is anything that happened too soon, too quick for your psyche or for your body to handle. So most of us have had that. And just like when you were saying, a lot of us have had sexual trauma, it could be just the way that someone looked at you,
Right.
made a remark about your body that had you feel, because no one can make you feel. It's like a little language thing there, but someone can have you feel like crap or can have you feel violated. Cat whistles, all of this kind of like, oh, I don't feel safe in my body anymore. And more of us have that and are starting to realize it's like, oh, there's some stuck stuff in our body or in our psyche. And by becoming aware of it, that is really our first step towards self-love.
Yeah.
And then, sex is the most natural thing in the world, yet it's the most hush thing about, it's like, oh my God, we can't talk about it. When I moved to England from Switzerland, I had my two boys in Switzerland, and then I moved to England and I had twin girls. And I asked my husband's cousin, I'm like, so what do you call a vagina? Like, what do you call it in English? What do you call it? She has three girls. And she said, okay, well, they're front bottoms. I'm like, they're what? They're front bottoms. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. I'm not going to let my girls say front bottom and back bottom. I'm like, what do you say for the bottom then? It's like bottom. I'm like, oh, bottom and front bottom. That makes it really easy. But then you just kind of see how conditioned we are. It's because maybe our parents didn't let us, or school. And it's, if we can just be open about having names for things, vulva bodied, pussy, whatever you want to call it, vagina. But it's like actually just realizing there are words for this, and like, we don't have to call it something else.
And there doesn't need to be shame around it, right? I was in Miami this weekend, and one of the women there is an OnlyFans model. And she was saying how she got married young and she came from a religious family. She was a pastor before she became a OnlyFans model. And what she said was in her marriage that she actually didn't know that she was allowed to say no.
Oh, such a good one. Yes.
Right? I just got chills saying that out loud, because I was like, wait a second, like she said that for, 4 or 5 years, like with her husband, she never knew that she was allowed to say no. She was conditioned she had no authority over her own body. And it like made me really start to think about that. Like, how many women out there are living through the same thing, especially like women who have been brought up in a religious family where, you're supposed to get married, or the marriage is set up, and this is your job is to service your husband, right? And wow, like what a crazy thinking that you can't say no.
Mind blown, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like one of the biggest thing is where I teach women is to learn how to say no. What does no feel like in your body?
Yeah.
Because often when people ask us, would you like to go to the movies? Are you coming for dinner? And it actually doesn't suit us, but we say yes and we go, and then we're like, didn't really feel good. And where, it's like, just start practicing saying no. What does that feel like? In the beginning, it's really damn uncomfortable. And then after a while, it's like, oh, no feels really good. I'm just going to go around the world and say no for a while. But then realizing that no is a full sentence.
Yeah.
I've taught my girls this. My twins are 22 now, and I've really said like, hey, no is a full sentence. You do not need to give an explanation. If your boyfriend asks, do you want to have sex or do you want to be touched? And you just say no. That's it. You don't have to appease him. You don't have to actually try to not hurt his feelings or someone else's feelings, because what you're doing by that is actually ultimately hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Because you'll make up some little white lie, which your body then realizes like, no, that's not actually the truth.
Well, it comes all the way back to that self-love piece, right? Like, if you love yourself enough, then you need to know, like, what is it that you don't love? What is it that is acceptable? What is not acceptable? It's that whole boundary piece around, like, this is okay for the moment, but maybe tomorrow it's not okay. So last night I was having sex with my husband. It's been a couple of days, and it was like that spark reignites. I love that. And in this pleasure, I was manifesting, right? Coming off of the weekend that I just came off of, and the luxury that I just came off of. And it was just so sensual and scrumptious. and the thoughts that were like emanating off of me. And then, as I was preparing for our show today, I was like, wow, like there's so many women who don't even enjoy having sex, right? Forget about like being able to get to the point where I was yesterday in this grand manifestation of what I was calling into my life. But I'm like, there are just women who don't even love themselves. And in Mexico, when we were together, I witnessed you doing a healing session with somebody. All you did was put your hands on her, and all of a sudden it was like years of trauma and trapped like craziness. I mean, it was like wild to witness because it was unexpected when it happened. But can you talk to us a little bit about that? How did you get into this? How did you know that this was a calling for you?
Oh, it's so interesting, right? So I mean, go back a little bit. It's married, very happily married, but grew apart. So divorced my husband, then went straight into another relationship with a guy with three daughters. So 7 children, big house, 7 different bedrooms, 7 different schools, 7 different personalities, holidays. I mean, it was like running an army until my body at one point just gave up. I spent 9 months going in and out of hospital all the time, and I couldn't do anything without being aided because I kept fainting. So hit rock bottom, and a lot of people have to kind of hit rock bottom to change. So that was my rock bottom story. And fast forward, that's how I really got into much more the personal development side of it. Before that, I'd really gotten into psychology to try and help my kids. I became a Senko and helped kids on the learning spectrum, on just had difficulties or disadvantages, so help them with that. Come this, I was like, okay, I'm going deep into spirituality, into really learning who I am. Something's got to give. So I went to this one course, and I remember that there was this something there, and I was like, okay, these people are asking me questions that I've never even had asked by my husband of so many years, my boyfriend, my kids. And I was like, what is this? I want to learn how we can actually be on that hot seat, how we can coach like this. So fast forward, I became a director of a conscious sexuality movement in London, and brought their first coaching program to the UK. Went, and in that, I remember in one of their courses, I got flogged in between my shoulder blades, and the person that was doing it wasn't doing it hard enough. And I was like, okay, there's something. I could just feel my body start to move, start to vibrate. And I'm like, oh, it's almost like a chrysalis, like the butterfly is about to come in. Oh, and I could feel that the back of my lungs. I'm like, so I asked the dominatrix and her assistant, I'm like, could both of you flog me? And I said, something big is coming. And they're like, okay. And I said, yeah, something, it has been stuck there for a long time. So they went, and at one point it was like, whoa, it really felt like something left my body. And all the sexual trauma that I'd repressed, or that my psyche had just kind of like shoved under the carpet because I wasn't ready for it, came flooding in. So I could see everything, I could hear it, I could taste it, everything just came flooding in. And not in a bad way, but it was just like, I was like, whoa, this is what was underneath it. So before really knowing that to move through something, you have to duplicate it, I went back to London and I hired a dom, and I reenacted my date rape with 5 guys, but gave it a different ending. And so this is how my whole BDSM, dominatrix career started, because of doing the work with him, realizing that actually that's how you can release a lot of sexual trauma. So that's what I took a lot of my clients through. And there was a lot of tantra, and it was just like, this sensuality is really like the life force in us, and people do not have access to it. We shut down our light, and then because we've triggered people, because people have hurt us, people have said remarks about it, but then we shut down that light, and then we become dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And that actually is the energy, and people feel that when they're around us. They're like, whoa, you're really alive. What's happening? And they don't feel like the sexuality, but they feel like the aliveness.
Okay, so we have to rewind now because
that was just everything in like 3 minutes.
Now we have to rewind because I know things about you, but the audience does not. So we're going to rewind. First of all, can you explain to everybody what a dom or a dominatrix is?
Yes. So really interesting because most people think about a dominatrix as this person in tight leather or latex clothes. And yeah, some people do have tight leather or latex clothes. And often we think about a dom or a dominant or dominatrix being the one that's really mean and and getting her people, her subs to do what they want. But actually being the dominant person means that you are in service to the submissive, because the submissive can let go and they can get into this beautiful place of complete surrender. And as a dom, you have to hold that space. So that means you have to look at every single breath they take, what's happening in their body. You can even start tracking what trauma is happening or what the thoughts might be. And only then can you either use actually physical impact or or a flogger or a hand, or you can just do things like psychological. All right, Shilamida, look down at your hands. Good girl. Good girl. Oh, I didn't tell you that you could look up. There you go. Good girl. I like it when you behave. Now you may look at the camera again.
I love when you talk to me like that.
Just notice where so many people are like, oh my God, that's really weird. But it's like, there's some energy there, right? And it's like, oh, I either like it or I don't like it, but I'm willing to explore this.
Well, so I don't like being told what to do.
Yeah, no,
So,
I know.
For me, I don't like being told what to do, but the way that you approach me and you're speaking. So for those of you that are watching or listening to the show right now, Juliette and I have been in a mastermind container together for like a year and a half now, right? It's been like a long time.
Right? It's been
And
great.
a few months ago, 18 of us met in Tulum, Mexico, and Juliette brought all of her toys and brought out the dom the whole time she was there, and it was fun. I enjoyed it because I don't like being told what to do, but when you put this sensual whisper into it, and all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe I do like being told. It's like different when somebody comes at you and they're like, you got to do this and you got to do it this way, blah, 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 right? Like it's like that tonality. But then you are like, have this like sensuality about you where it's like, all right, well, what else is she going to tell me to do right now?
It's kind of let's play and let's see what's alive. Let's play, let's see what's alive. And sometimes there's nothing. And that's the beautiful thing about sensuality. Things change like that. I know all of us would love a proper formula. It's like, I'm going to kiss her here on the right part of the neck, right under her earlobe. And then, I'm going to be in like a big dog. But no, that doesn't quite work, right? So sometimes it's just like, just whispering someone's ear saying, oh, you've been naughty. And you can just play around with words like that. And it's like, oh, maybe actually this today is great. And also being honest, saying, yeah, no, today that doesn't float my boat. Thank you.
So for somebody who doesn't know what flogging is, can you give us a little explanation of what that is? For those of you who are listening on your podcast station, you're going to have to go watch this episode on YouTube at 50 Shades of Shilamida, because Juliette is now showing us what a flog is.
So I'm just trying to think. So a flogger is usually something with a long handle. It's usually leather or suede, although they do make it in different materials. And then it has falls. So falls are the pieces of leather, suede, string that actually come out of the handle. So it's a bit like a pom-pom, but longer. And then with pieces of fabric that can create an impact on the skin. You can hear it now. And of course, people are vegan, they do vegan ones, they do string ones, they do all kinds of other ones.
I love that. Animal conscious.
This is impact play. This is one of the things that we have for impact play. I love floggers and I love a really steady one. The sound of it and the impact on the shoulders or on someone's bum. You have to be careful not to hit this in places like kidneys and things, but it can just like create that sensation. It's like, oh my God, I'm safe. Just like, when you tie someone up, people would think, oh my God, I want to get out of that. But actually it creates a lot of safety. It creates like babies, we swaddle them. So you can actually do that with rope. You can do that with holding someone really tight. And then the nervous system's like, whoa, I can actually relax in this. And that's when you often see people start to shake, like what we saw with the person that in Tulum, that, you know, she started to shake and like quiver, and all of us, that's why I was directing everyone's like, here, put your hands there, this, and just hold her. Because oftentimes we haven't been held as a child or in growing up.
It's so powerful. And for those of you listening or watching, I just want you to picture 18 of us in a house together, and next door was like a bachelor party of some sort.
What about that?
Their balcony had full view to what we were doing in our yard. And one of our women decided that she was going to be topless the whole time, which gave everybody permission to be topless. So at some point there was a lot of nipples out in our yard. And then here comes Juliette with a whole bag
It is a fun.
ropes and flogs and chains, and I don't even know what you had there, but it was quite the experience. And I'm sure that it made some people very uncomfortable, but for those of us who were comfortable with it, it was such an experience because, like, let's face it, who has friends who are doms and who show up with floggers? And I think like that was my perception too, that a dominatrix is somebody who dresses in black spandex leather and beats you, right? Like I always thought that it was more about like pain, not pleasure, but you showed up and you were all about this pleasure and this sensuality, and I was like, oh, I'm kind of digging this. Maybe I want
for me, it's all sensation, right? So at one point I brought up the fork and the fork and the spoon. And it's like, oh, what is a metal fork? I mean, all the kinds of stuff that we have in our kitchen. A whisk, what does that feel like on your skin? And that doesn't have anything to do with being a dominatrix, but that's all my other stuff, my tantra and my erotic blueprint coaching and all the stuff that I've learned over the years. But it's kind of like, oh, where can we just pick up anything and kind of like, oh, be curious about it. What does that feel like on my skin? Like a little duster. I have these sitting around next to my office because I like the way it kind of feels, right? So it's one of those, I don't know, microfiber fluffers. And you just rub it next to your ear and you're like, oh, yeah, don't want it a bit harder, don't want it stroking down. Softer.
It's all about awakening the senses.
Completely. It is.
So something that we did in Miami, you would have loved this. We went to brunch, and part of the brunch experience was they brought a bowl out in front of us, and then they poured chocolate all over our hands, asked us to wash our hands with the chocolate. Then they came out with sugar and had us like exfoliate our, it was so erotic and sensual, and it just like opened up all of the flavor, and you know, it was like this expansive experience in having a meal. Like it's not you're just going to sit down and eat, you're going to feel it, you're going to touch it, you're going to smell it, you're going to like experience all of these things. And it's kind of like what I would imagine that you are doing in your work with women or men is opening up this feeling, right? Because ultimately what people don't realize is during those first 7 years of our life that we become traumatized, and for some people it doesn't have to be that you get raped or beaten, or it doesn't have to be this like horrible thing, but you know, you might have stood up in a classroom and everybody laughed at you, and all of a sudden you created these stories in your mind, or you know, like an uncle said something to you and that stuck with you forever, right? And so we shut down this feeling part of us.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize is the whole point of us being in this human existence is to feel, right?
Oh, yes. This is why I called my brand Feel Fully You. And then I have to laugh about it because I'm like, oh, I don't want to feel today. No, not today. It's really frigging inconvenient. I don't want to feel everything today.
Right. Because, you know, what I've been living through recently, I've really been engulfed in learning about God and Jesus and religion and spirituality. And what I'm realizing is that when we actually leave the earth plane, and what I read in conversations with God is that we actually do leave with our body, that the dense matter of our body stays here, but the rest of our body actually goes, right? And so when we're in the state of heaven, we can call it, or, other realm, or whatever you want to call it, we don't actually feel there. We just know, right? We just know that we are in this bliss state of being. So when we come into human life, we come here to feel, but we don't like to feel pain, anger, sadness, hurt. So then we spend our whole lifetime here in these bodies trying to avoid the exact thing that we came down here to feel.
And it's so funny that you say this, because I had a near-death experience when I was 18 months old. And I didn't remember about this until I started doing a sacred medicine journey. And in it, it was like, I just went through the tunnel, like darkness up to the light, and I became one. And it was like I became the air and the wind and the sun and everything. And I was like, whoo, ego death. Holy moly, I'm everything.
Wow.
I remember asking my sister, I'm like, yo, did I have a near-death experience when I was about 18 months old? And she's like, yeah, we fished you out of the moat. And you were like face down because it was green algae. You just thought it was grass. I'm like, wow, okay, yes, that's what it was. So then I explained to her, I'm like, so this is what happened. I did this medicine journey, and she was really ill in the hospital at that point. So I remember coming to Holland and we were talking about it. And then the day of when she died, she's like, oh, Beam, it's my nickname. Can I go to the light now? I'm like, yes. So every step of the way, I've kind of like always somehow known what to do. So I've used that for my sister. Then a year later, it was my dad who also passed on. And I remember, he was incoherent. And then the moment that I decided, it's like, okay, we can do something about this now. He woke up, doctor was there. I said, Daddy, this is what's going to happen. And the relief on his face and his whole body's like, oh, finally. 6 months later, my mom committed euthanasia. So the same thing. I'm like, okay, ready to go. This is how it was for me. It might be very different for you, but all seeing 3 of the people that I loved so much pass over within like 2 years space, and all having had that experience of becoming one. It's like, whoa, it's pretty intense that if we listen to every little thing that's actually coming through, if we allow ourselves to feel it, then we'll know what the next step is, and then we'll hear it. And then it's like little breadcrumbs, right? It's like little breadcrumbs. That's the next thing that I need to do. I'm like, okay, it doesn't make sense, but let's do it.
Yeah, well, what I find interesting is that, most people live life fearing death. And what I've discovered recently that I guess I was kind of naive to, I didn't realize that most religions teach God as like this fearful entity, right? So a lot of people really live this fear-based life because of what they've been taught that the creator is going to do to them. And I find it to be so sad because I feel like there's this beautiful connection that we can have. And, we're living this experience of feeling that we're shutting down ultimately so that we can go back up there and be like, okay, I've experienced that and now I feel fulfilled. But it's like the very opposite. And it's very sad to me that this is what's happening. And my hope in doing this show is that we start opening up people's horizons to like this whole world, like the whole Dom world. Like I had no idea. I had like my perception of what I thought it was. And then I get to meet you in person. And I'm like, wow, this is fun.
All right. And then you have this experience in Miami, and that's what I actually take my VIPs through, and love in-person workshops. I'll give them blindfolds, and then I'll give them a piece of fruit to smell, and then to like really savor it. So say like a fig, like just imagine that you have a fig in your hand and you bring it up to your nose and you close your eyes and you just smell that like honey smell, and it almost has like the back of your throat is almost starting to drool, and then you just touch it against your face. You feel that velvety skin, and then you open it and you lick it just a little bit, bring it to your mouth, and then bite into it. You can almost start self-relating, right? Self-relating.
Totally. I get
Don't even know how to say that word.
I feel the little like pricklies
Right?
inside. Yeah, I love it. Well, it's another thing. It's like when we eat, it's always a rush, right? We're in a rush. We got to get the food in. We're not eating for pleasure. We're eating for just
Quickness.
eating. Right. Yeah.
And I
Just
think you and I both have something in common that we lost, a shit ton of weight.
yes.
And it's
Yes.
actually also by realizing it's like, oh, is the next bite giving me pleasure or not anymore? And that's how I talk to my couples who haven't had sex for 23 years. I'm like, is the next stroke or touch actually giving more pleasure or less? Because when it's giving less pleasure, let's just stop it right there and then say, hey, this was enough for now. And that's how you build capacity with people. Because if you haven't had sex for so long, then, all of a sudden you start fondling and you don't have a lot of capacity. 2 minutes of just stroking skin might be enough already.
There's actually couples that have not had sex in 23 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, it's mind blowing for me that people would operate that way. But you know what? At the same time, like I can see it, right? Like my husband and I will go a couple of days without having sex, and all of a sudden I kind of forget, like, right? And he's more sexual than I am, believe it or not. And so, like, then when we do have sex, it's so good, and I'm like, like why? Like why do I wait, right?
Yeah. But it's also people have a different way into pleasure, right? And we don't always know that. I didn't know this until I started studying the erotic blueprints that, we can be really energetic and feel everyone's energy. And that's also our way into pleasure. But then, when there are dirty socks on the floor, we notice that and we're like, or we're very sensual, we like touch and the whole fig thing just now is like, oh, amazing. Yeah. And then there are other people that are really sexual and that just want, talk about, the genitals and the act and the whole thing is climax. Climax is the thing. And then you have people that love kink. And like I was saying, it could be psychological or it could actually be impact. But they have so much shame. They have so much shame, like to even tell their partner. It's like, oh, I wouldn't mind, if you blindfold me or if you use some ropes around me. But, to start communication is often really tough. And then the fifth version is a shapeshifter. So you love everything, but you've often been with someone who's been either only sexual or something else. So you're kind of starving because you love everything, but you've only been getting fed in one way. Mm-hmm. And then when you start to know this and you start to feed each other and feed yourself what you want, it's like, oh my God, a whole new world is opening. And it's a beautiful way to be. And one of the ways that I've been teaching my clients who haven't had sex for ages is like I take sex off the table. So in Scrumptious Dates, this is what I do. I take for the first 3 weeks, no sex. It's all about communication and it's all about starting to touch and ask for the touch that you want. Just like we were saying, we don't know that we actually like something. We don't know that we can say no to something. It's like, this kind of pressure, like nails up your inside of your wrist. Is that pleasurable? Yes or no answer. Going down with a flat hand on the inside of your wrist. Is that pleasurable? Yes, no. Which one was more pleasurable? A, with the nails, or B, with the flat hand? Questions that are really simple for the person who's receiving to answer, because then it's like, oh, you don't have to get back into your head, but you can just say, A, B, no, don't like it, yes. And not think about hurting the other person, but really it's like, oh, I like this. I like receiving.
I think a lot of people have trouble receiving. I mean, I didn't realize, and even with this weekend, like it's hard to receive. And especially when we're conditioned that like you can't, there's a condition with receiving, right? It's like you can't just receive without having to give, or you can't just receive without like there's some kind of attachment to it, but it doesn't have to be that way. And so we just have to uncondition the conditioning that we've been trained in. And here you are doing that. So you work with couples and with individuals.
Couples and individuals, and I coach a lot of therapists and coaches actually to get rid of the trauma that they hold in their bodies because of working with other clients.
And
So
yeah,
yeah,
you
so
guys,
this weekend I had to surrender a little bit as well.
I know. So excited.
So yeah,
Juliette just got engaged. It's amazing. And
but
so,
that's the thing, right? You cannot both, because we're a dom couple and it doesn't always work. And that's where it's like, oh,
ah,
I've learned how to actually step away from that. Like in my work and everything, I can be in this dominant energy because I need to hold people. But then when I'm with Alex and he wants to give me something or he wants to plan the whole trip away, it's like, okay, take a step back and be in the receiving energy. And also realizing that oftentimes we want to control things. It's not because we want to be controlling, but it's because we've had some kind of trauma response. Because it's like, oh, like, or dyslexic children want to know what's going on because then they can preempt what the next bit is going to be, how they should act.
I didn't realize that Alex was a Dom as well.
Yep.
That's so
That's
interesting.
interesting.
It is, because I was going to ask you, one, how does your fiance feel about all of this? And also, how do your children feel about you doing this kind of work?
So I've got 4 Muslim kids. It's today, I think is today or tomorrow is Eid, so it's the end of Ramadan. And I used to walk around this red t-shirt saying the pussy knows. And and the kids are like, Mommy, really? I mean, already my friends think you're a MILF, and now you have to walk around like this. So for the longest time, they really did not like that.
Okay.
Then they've seen the change in me and in the clients and in the people that I've worked with. I've actually had I'm also a hypnotherapist. So I've also hypnotized one of my kids, and she has just completely changed her life from smoking quite a lot of pot to nothing and really being, she's a great artist, and she's got her first solo or a new solo exhibition, got into the master school that she wanted of art. So I'm like, okay, it works. So they've actually seen where it's paid off, where it's helped, my parents, my sister transition, where it's helped all my clients. And now they're actually noticing how much has rubbed off on them without them knowing. Maybe not so much sexuality, but definitely consciousness, being curious about people, knowing how to ask questions, knowing how to move through trauma, how to move through triggers so that they're not being unconscious, that they're not reacting unconsciously, but they're responding in a conscious way. So yeah, no, at the moment it's kind of cool. The last thing that my mom said, or one of the last things on the last day that she was alive, she's like, I'm actually really proud that you are helping women get pleasure. She said, I never had a lot of sexual pleasure with your father, and I was very ashamed because I just didn't think this was in my vocabulary or in my life to even have.
So many people have so much shame. And I have to say that even who I am, there was a lot of shame in my relationship. And, for a long time, I didn't know how to communicate with my husband, and he was a snorer. So there was many years that we didn't even sleep in the same bed together. And then something shifted, and I realized that if I put a fan on at night, that I could drown him out, and that, we needed to make it back together. And then he goes to sleep before I do. I'm a night crawler, and he likes to go to sleep earlier. So the whole sex thing, it didn't really work for us because I wasn't ready to have sex when he wanted to have sex. So I would just masturbate and go to sleep. And then one night I was like, why am I masturbating when there is a man ready and willing laying in the bed next to me? So this one night I decided to wake him up in the middle of the night, and he was like, that was the best night
ever.
And so I did it several nights in a row. I don't even know, like at one point we went like 21 days, and I was like, this is great because I can do it on my time. I can do it like my way, right? And he was so willing to oblige with me. But before, there was like a lot of shame around that. Like I had shame because I wanted to masturbate before bed. I had shame because I didn't know how to communicate to that to him, And so it's such a key point to be conscious and aware of what you're going through, because I feel like a lot of times we're in this autopilot and we just think, well, I'm just going to do this and get it over with. But
completely. And that's the thing, right? This is why I teach my couples. It's like, put in a date for a date morning. Don't do it at night because you're all going to be tired. put the kids are going to be either out of the house, get a nanny, whatever, send them off on play dates. Put your phones away. Do not talk about work. Do not talk about children. Do not talk about any of your problems, but focus on each other. And even if you do that once a week for an hour and a half, 2 hours, you start communicating together. And then within no time, all my sexless couples, I tell them 3 weeks, no sex. And they come back after the second week. And it's like, that homework that you gave us, like we actually kind of broke the drought. I'm like, yay!
The only time that the teacher is happy that the student didn't listen to the rules.
And it's just so cool because you start, if you start focusing on things that you used to like, one of the things is like start making a list of the things that you used to love about your partner, and then, read it to each other. And our minds cannot stay in the negative and the positive at the same time. So you're actually consciously rewiring your mind back to seeing all the good about each other.
That's so
You talk about this in gratitudes as well, right? But it's
right, because when you're grateful, you can't be angry. When you're grateful, you can't be resentful. When you're grateful, all the negative goes away. So you shift the energy, and it's so important. And I think it's really important that this show gets in front of couples that have not connected and have thought that it was lost. And even people who look at me in my life and they see how in love Ben and I are, they don't know. Like, this is 12 years in the making. There was definitely times within our relationship where we were not having sex, we weren't sleeping together, we weren't connecting at all, we weren't communicating. What do they call it? The 7-year itch.
Yeah.
7-year itch. I went through the 7-year itch, and that was really hard because, I remember sitting down with Ben and being like, listen, if you don't start communicating with me and shifting and changing, I'm about to go do, like, I felt it coming. It was coming. And I'm so grateful that I didn't have to go that far, that we did reel it in and bring it back to a better place. But lots of couples out there struggling, and the highlight reel of what we're watching on Facebook or Instagram are all the things you're not seeing, the whole backstory of what it took to get to this point. And thank God there's people like Juliette doing this kind of work in the world.
Thank you. And then there's also, we're going through seasons. Sometimes, menopause, hey, fun, not so fun. But, your libido is kind of different. Yeah? Or say that you're on your period, or you've just had an accident. Then you're in a resting state. And sometimes, your partner might be in a resting state. He's got lots of stressful things on in his job. And then all of a sudden you're like, but I'm curious, or I want to actually like start manifesting in sex. And it's like, when you're not on the same level there, communication, right? It's all about communication. You don't always need to be on the same level, but it does need communication. And that's where actually that's just so key. And then it's beautiful because you'll come together. It's like so cool that you're there and I'm somewhere completely different. And that's cool too.
This has been amazing. I could talk to you about this stuff all day long. Tell the audience if they want to find you, how they can find you, how they can work with you. Where do they go?
Yes, my website is feelfullyu.com, and there are lots of group programs. I am redoing some VIP experiences. So you've already heard about the sensual delight. There might actually be some dungeon work. I'm arranging Marrakesh and Paris soon for a few days for some clients. Then there are a lot of group works that I do there. On Instagram, I'm Juliette Caraman, and on Facebook, I'm Juliette Caraman van Schardenberg. So Feel Fully You is probably the easiest to find me. And from there on, you can just follow me on social media. There's a lot of free stuff there, a lot of meditations, a lot of codes that you get. So just listen if there's something you want there, reach out.
I love it. For those of you that are just joining us for the first time, finding the show, thank you for watching. My name is Shilamida. You can find me all over the internet. My website is www.shilamida.com. It's SHILAMIDA. I hang out on Instagram at 50 Shades of Shilamida, also at goddess_of_gratitude. If you are listening to the show, you can go watch the show, and I highly recommend you go find it on YouTube, because Juliette is a sight. She's looking all kinds of gorgeous today. You can see what a flog looks like and experience that as well. If you are on Facebook, come find me there. I also play on Facebook and on Pinterest. For those of you that come in week after week, I thank you for listening to the show. There is a new episode that airs every Wednesday, every Friday. Guests on my show are above and beyond. These are conversations that you are definitely not having in your everyday life. My whole world is about manifesting, defying the impossible, and living out your dreamiest, most desirable, scrumptious life.
Right.
Juliette, any last thoughts or words for the audience to leave us with today?
Actually, yes. Set a timer for twice a day for 90 seconds. Put everything down and just take a breath. Notice where that breath falls in your body. And then what's the image that comes up? See that image? What's the thought that comes up? What's the emotion that follows? And what's the body sensation? And that in a nutshell is my R4 method that I take people through to actually become more conscious.
That's beautiful. And I hope that everybody follows the advice. Go do it. Go lick your husband or your wife or whoever you want to lick.
With consent, though. Before you do this, you just say, hey, honey, do you have 5 minutes? Can I have 5 minutes of your time? And they say, yes, it's fine. If they say no, then you'll start feeling rebuked, or if you try it without getting their consent, they just push you away. Yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah, I don't have that problem in this house. I even have my children, Mommy, can I lick you? I'm like, oh boy.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. I love you so much. I can't wait to see you again in person. Thanks to everybody for watching. I hope that you have the best day ever, and we will see you on the internet. Bye.